The Minnesota Vikings won a must-win game. We needed this win to stay in the hunt against the Carolina Panthers, and it was not a very pretty win. This was a ugly win by the Minnesota Vikings, but it kept a win's a win. We needed this win a lot. It is only our second win at home this season, which is huge for the Minnesota Vikings. 28-7 win. Sorry. 28-27 win over the Carolina Panthers. And now also with the Cardinals, Buccaneers, and Bears losing yesterday, this is a huge week for the Minnesota Vikings, and our playoff chances have increased a lot. Still, we are just still in the hunt, and we have an outside chance at making the playoffs. But with the Buccaneers, Cardinals, and Bears losing, the Minnesota Vikings' chances for the playoffs has increased a lot. We will be recapping everything that has happened this game, and our season is not over. I mean, people after last week were ruling our season over because the Cowboys was a must win, but we can make that up. We can make up for that. Of course, we have to win this Buccaneers or Saints game, one of these two games, and we have to make up for that loss against the Cowboys, which was a huge loss for the Vikings. And then also we have the Jaguars this week. Playing the Jaguars, this is a good time to play the Jaguars. Obviously, coming off of a lot of big games, now you have a pretty easy matchup to get ready for. Tampa Bay Buccaneers after that. You have the Bears still. You have the Saints still. You have a lot of matchups that are very tough still for the Minnesota Vikings. We didn't see much in the first quarter, but we did see a great opening drive. Now, the Minnesota Vikings are weird in the fact where we always look good on our opening drive. Our opening drive is usually and just about always our best drive of the game. Our opening drives, for some reason, our offense just looks so good every opening drive. I think what it has to do, it just has to do with Gary Kubiak, who's just calling the right plays at the right time, and then he uses all of his good plays in the opening drive. It's just, I don't know what it is with the Minnesota Vikings where they pass all over defenses, run through the defenses on the opening drive, and then after that, just three and outs, and the Vikings offense just falls apart. Now, this is kind of what we saw. This is kind of what we saw against the Carolina Panthers. Of course, they did make up for it in the fourth quarter, which was a great fourth quarter by the Minnesota Vikings. On the very first drive of the game, the Minnesota Vikings had a 63-yard drive, ending in a touchdown to Justin Jefferson. I think it was a 7-yard passing touchdown, but Kirk Cousins looked great. Kirk Cousins looked amazing this opening drive. Same with Dalvin Cook. A lot of his passes were to Dalvin Cook, and this first drive by the Minnesota Vikings game was great. And then at the end of the first quarter, this was the only scoring drive of the first quarter. Second quarter, Carolina Panthers in the red zone, 3rd and 11. Eric Kendricks had an amazing interception. Eric Kendricks back-to-back games, interceptions, stopping scoring drives. Both this game and then of course against the Dallas Cowboys, both in the red zone. That interception against the Cowboys was one of the best interceptions I've ever seen, that diving catch. Anyways, back-to-back interceptions in the red zone, stopping scoring drives, both in field goal range. Of course, both this week and last week, the Minnesota Vikings did not score off of that interception, but it did stop a scoring drive from the opposing teams. Anyways, when the Panthers did get the ball back pretty quickly, and then Teddy did connect for Robbie Anderson for a 41-yard touchdown. You can't allow those touchdowns. The Minnesota Vikings defense, one touchdown they allowed yesterday, and that was possibly one of the worst touchdowns we've allowed this entire season. Teddy Bridgewater threw a 1-yard pass to Robbie Anderson, who ran for 41 yards in the open field. That is the easiest touchdown I've ever seen the Minnesota Vikings give up, and for that to be the only touchdown yesterday, they really stepped up. I mean, they really stepped up, and this is because of Eric Kendricks, Eric Wilson, and Harrison Smith, and this is what we've seen the entire season so far. These three people are really helping this Vikings defense, and it's why we're good on the red zone. It's why we're good on third down, is because we can stop those short plays. But this 41-yard play is something the Minnesota Vikings cannot just give up, and that was terrible. Anyways, one thing I loved from yesterday, because Kirk Cousins really have fallen off this year, I love to see him know that he can use his legs. Because Kirk Cousins, he is built. He can run. And people don't realize that Kirk Cousins can run because he doesn't. He never runs for first down. Yesterday, he dove for 2 first downs, and that's one of the best things I've seen by Kirk Cousins in the last couple of years. Because there was so many opportunities so far this year for Kirk Cousins to run for first downs, opening areas for him to run for first downs. We saw yesterday 2 times he dove for a first down, and that was beautiful by Kirk Cousins. And then it did set up Dan Bailey for a 53-yard field goal going into the half. So Vikings were up 10-7 going into the half. There was also a blocked kick. Was that? No, that's later. Anyways, third quarter, Minnesota Vikings got the ball to start the second half, and this was the worst start to a second half by the Minnesota Vikings I have ever seen. immediately. I think Vikings only went 2 yards. Kirk Cousins gave up one of the worst fumbles ever. I think he was trying to ground the pass, but he just did an awful job. He just rolled it right into Jeremy Chinn's hands, who just got a recovery and got a touchdown. Vikings immediately got the ball back, and right away, another fumble by Dalvin Cook. Jeremy Chinn got it again, and now the Vikings are losing. And now what are they down to? Now the Vikings are down 21-10 because of back-to-back bad fumbles. Both of them were on the Vikings. And the Vikings offense yesterday, here's a stat for you. The Vikings offense yesterday gave up more points than the Vikings defense because of those two bad plays. This was the worst the worst start by a Vikings second half I've ever seen in my life. This was terrible, but we needed something to happen. Because again, the Vikings gave the ball back to the Carolina Panthers, easily 3-and-out, or I think maybe they did get a first down. Anyways, the Minnesota Vikings special team, who was it? DJ Wanham, came through huge. Carolina Panthers went down the field again to score another one. They were going to get a field goal, and then DJ Wanham came up huge with a blocked field goal. This is back-to-back weeks. Last week, Eric Wilson had a block extra point. This week, a blocked field goal. And it's odd to see because the Vikings are so bad on special teams. They always allow big plays on special teams, but 2 games back-to-back where they block kicks, that's very impressive by the Minnesota Vikings in the third quarter with Dalvin Cook out. Now, this shows you Dalvin Cook going out and the Minnesota Vikings still can put up points on the board. This shows you how good Kirk Cousins can be and how good we need him to be for the Minnesota Vikings to make a playoff run this year. We need the Kirk Cousins we saw yesterday. And we need the offensive line we saw yesterday. I mean, without Adam Thielen, his number one target, without Dalvin Cook, the best Minnesota Viking offensive player, the best Minnesota Viking on the team, without those two players, the Vikings offense still looked good. Now, Dalvin Cook did go out with an injury and then came back in later in the game. Minnesota Vikings had another scoring drive where they got a field goal, which put them to 21-13 going into the fourth quarter. Anyways, Mike Zimmer again threw the challenge flag in the fourth quarter with DJ Moore, and then he did not get that one. Kirk Cousins in the fourth quarter, again, is the Kirk Cousins I wish we could see every game. Kirk Cousins, yesterday's performance was by far his best of the season so far. Now, I know he had one terrible fumble. He had one bad turnover. So take that one play out of the picture. Kirk Cousins had an amazing day. He had a phenomenal day. I mean, he overthrew his target once. I think it was Kyle Rudolph. He overthrew Kyle Rudolph, which the Minnesota Vikings did still score on that drive. He did overthrow Kyle Rudolph. Outside of that, the Minnesota Vikings, though, and Kirk Cousins, I think he can do a lot better. But when we see, when we play a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we need Kirk Cousins to move around more. One thing I don't understand about the Minnesota Vikings is why they don't do more bootleg play action passes. We don't do. Last year in 2019, every time the Minnesota Vikings did a bootleg play action pass, it worked. Now we have Gary Kubiak in charge of the offense, and they don't do that. And it just doesn't make sense. When we play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are going to be Kirk Cousins is not going to be very comfortable under center, and against the New Orleans Saints, two very good pass rushing teams. When we play both of those, we need these bootlegs. We need Kirk to move around with his leg. We need him to scramble. We need him to run for first downs. We need big games from Kirk Cousins because those are not teams you can run. You can give Dalvin Cook 25 carries and he's going to win you the game. Those are not the teams. Those are the two best run stopping teams in the NFL. We need the Kirk Cousins we saw against the Carolina Panthers to show up and play that well against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and against the New Orleans Saints, who are not going to give Kirk Cousins very many opportunities to make big plays. They will rush Kirk Cousins all day. They will make him not comfortable under center at all, and they are two of the best run stopping defenses in the NFL. So we need that Kirk Cousins to play, and we need that Kirk Cousins to step up against these next few games and against the Chicago Bears again. We need big games from Kirk Cousins. And what we saw in the fourth quarter is the Kirk Cousins I wish we could see all 4 quarters of every game for the rest of the season. And the Minnesota Vikings will make the playoffs and they will make a playoff run. But of course, we know that's not going to happen because we know who Kirk Cousins is and we know how inconsistent he will be. And we know that the Minnesota Vikings, even if they do come up with a playoff berth, we know he cannot bring us to the Super Bowl. We already know that. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. I'm saying he is not the quarterback you want for a Super Bowl playoff run. So now the Minnesota Vikings are down 21-10, and we have a long way to go. I think it's 21-10 at this point. We have a long way to go, but the best drive of the game was not the opening drive. Surprisingly, the opening drive was not the best drive of the game. The Minnesota Vikings went on a 75-yard drive to score a touchdown and then ended the drive in a 2-point conversion. This touchdown was a 10-yard pass to Justin Jefferson, and this was a huge play by Kirk Cousins. I mean, Kirk Cousins brought him basically all of the 75 yards, and this was big by him. And then my favorite play of the night. I loved this play so much because it's exactly what I said the Vikings need to do. When it was a 2-point conversion, they did a play action pass. Of course, Dalvin Cook, the entire defense thought it was going to Dalvin Cook. Play action pass, bootleg out to the right, open BC Johnson. That was a beautiful catch by BC Johnson, by the way. I mean, I want to say to see, for example, to see Adam Thielen go out, who was our number one offensive playmaker, or our number one, who do you want to call it? Kirk Cousins' favorite target. To have Adam Thielen go out, who is our best wide receiver by far, and to see Chad Beebe and BC Johnson step up how much they did, and even Kyle Rudolph again put him in with the conversation. To see all these guys step up is phenomenal. So now the Minnesota Vikings are down by 3, and then after the best drive of the game, this was the best Minnesota Vikings drive of the game and the best overall drive of the game. This shows you the Minnesota Vikings offense and how good and how many playmakers we actually have on offense. We just don't use a lot of these guys. So after the best drive of the game and a defensive stop, the Minnesota Vikings are sitting comfortably. They have a comfortable 2 minutes and 12 seconds to come back and either tie the game with a field goal or win, or of course, be on top with a touchdown. Now, the Minnesota Vikings are getting the ball back, and of course, again, we choke. Chad Beebe was supposed to get a fair catch, and he fumbled the ball, and it was Carolina's ball. And what was it? How many years? It was Carolina's ball at the 9-yard line. And now, of course, with Carolina, who already has a lead, 2 minutes and 12 seconds on the clock, the Minnesota Vikings are not looking like they should win this game. But the Vikings defense comes up huge again. The Vikings defense was great yesterday. The Vikings defense is what you want to see. Now, this is not the best offense in the world. Of course, they don't have their best playmaker, Christian McCaffrey, but you can't say this Carolina Panthers offense is bad, because Teddy Bridgewater has made Robbie Anderson, who looks great, has made Curtis Samuel have a breakout year, and then DJ Moore also look good. You can't say this Carolina Panthers offense is bad, but with Christian McCaffrey, they're a lot better. I will say that with Christian McCaffrey, they are an elite offense and looked great, and that defense is young. So Panthers in a few years could be Super Bowl contenders, honestly, but they are in a very tough division also with that, so I don't know if that's really going to happen. Anyways, of course, Chad Beebe fumbles the ball. The Vikings deactivated KJ Osborne after he did fumble punt return. Now, KJ Osborne has been pretty good in the special teams return game, so has Amir Abdullah. Of course, I also think Mike Boone should be our kick returner. Outside of that, anyways, Chad Beebe fumbles on the punt, and of course, Carolina recovers and has 9 yards to go to get a touchdown. Vikings defense, one of the best red zone defenses in the NFL because of our linebackers and because of our safeties, stop them. Easy 3 and out, and they hold them just to a field goal. So now the Minnesota Vikings have a minute 50 on the clock to get a win. So now the Minnesota Vikings are down by 6 against the Carolina Panthers and have a minute 50 to go to score. And once again, Kirk Cousins comes up huge. This 11 straight receptions from Kirk Cousins to the Minnesota Vikings receivers. 11 straight receptions puts the Vikings at another scoring drive. Again, another great scoring drive by the Minnesota Vikings, and you love to see it. And then, of course, ends with Chad Beebe's first NFL touchdown, the biggest touchdown of the game, a redemption touchdown after fumbling the ball, a redemption touchdown. Chad Beebe gets his first touchdown of the game, which was the biggest play of the game, and now the Minnesota Vikings are up 28 to 27. But the problem is there is 46 seconds on the clock. Now, Panthers don't have a timeout, but there's still 46 seconds again on the clock for the Carolina Panthers to get into field goal range. And that's exactly what they did, because this Minnesota Vikings defense is not very good against deep passes. We have been struggling against big plays all season so far. So the Minnesota Vikings, Carolina Panthers, with 46 seconds on the clock, set up a 53-yard field goal for Joey Sly. He comes out there, and honestly, I kind of had a feeling. I had a feeling he was going to miss, because I just don't think the Carolina Panthers deserve that win. Now, the Vikings made big mistakes. I mean, to have 3 turnovers that all ended into scoring drives and still come up with a win is huge. But, of course, big plays by the Minnesota Vikings also was huge. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings had a blocked field goal. I don't think if the Vikings didn't block that one field goal, I don't think we would have won the game. Vikings outplayed the Carolina Panthers by far, and it's not even close, even though we did have multiple bad fumbles that all turned into scoring drives. But of course, the Vikings come off in a nail biter. Joey Sly kicks wide left and misses the field goal. Vikings win 28 to 27. It feels good because the Vikings have already lost by 1 point twice this season. Against the Tennessee Titans and against the Seattle Seahawks, Vikings have lost by 1 point and now come up with a nail biter and win by 1 point, somehow winning the game with 3 turnovers. This Vikings offense is so good with or without Adam Thielen. And this is what I've said. I said that, of course, the Vikings offense is better when we have Thielen healthy, but with or without Adam Thielen, I think this Vikings offense is great. Kirk Cousins threw for 307 passing yards, 19 rushing yards. That's might be a career high right now. 19 rushing yards, I do think it is. 75.6% completion percentage, 115.7 QBR, a bad fumble, and 3 passing touchdowns. This is back-to-back games where Kirk Cousins has thrown 3 passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Kirk Cousins is playing better than he's played his entire season so far, and I expect to see more of this, but of course, we all know, all Minnesota Vikings fans know, we are not going to continue to see this Kirk Cousins, and he's going to fall short one of these next however many games. Anyways, Dalvin Cook, 18 carries for 61 yards, and then that's only 3.4 yards a carry. Great by the Carolina Panthers defense, 4 receptions for 21 yards and a fumble. This is the first time this season where Dalvin Cook did not get over 100 yards and the Vikings still won the game. That shows you this pass game is very good with or without Adam Thielen. Dalvin Cook didn't even go for over 100 scrimmage yards and the Vikings still won the game. Now look at this. Here's another stat to show you. Who do you think got the most receiving yards yesterday? It wasn't Justin Jefferson. It wasn't Kyle Rudolph. It wasn't Dalvin Cook. Olabisi Johnson got the most receiving yards for the Vikings. Our 7th round draft pick out of 2019 got the most receiving yards for the Minnesota Vikings. 7 receptions for 74 yards and a 2-point conversion. There's 4 different players who actually got 7 receptions, but Olabisi Johnson led the game in receiving yards. Thank God we have Olabisi Johnson to step in for Adam Thielen. I am so happy for this guy. 7th round draft pick. He's going to be on the roster for a long time to come. Kyle Rudolph, 7 receptions for 68 yards. Chad Beebe, 7 receptions for 63 yards, a fumble and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson, 7 receptions for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that puts Justin Jefferson like possibly top 5 in receiving yards right now. Maybe even touchdowns too. Justin Jefferson is having a career year, and it's only his first year in the NFL, and he's looking like a veteran. That's 4 different players with 7 receptions. This was a big win, must win by the Minnesota Vikings. Only our 2nd home game win of the NFL season so far, and this puts us, I think, 3-4 in the conference so far, and this is going to be helpful, of course, with the Carolina Panthers losing. I mean, with the Arizona Cardinals losing, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers losing, and then also with the Bears losing. This puts the Vikings big hopes for the Minnesota Vikings, and possibly, I think we went from about a 20% playoff chance to possibly a 40%. Of course, it's going to depend on these next 2 weeks for the Minnesota Vikings, but I think our playoff chances have increased a lot, and they have, and we're going to be previewing the Jacksonville Jaguars game. This is going to be a refresher game for the Minnesota Vikings. We'll be previewing this game this Thursday. I hope you all do enjoy.